Shalom, my brothers and sisters in Christ. May Christ have mercy on us all. May Yahweh be with us. Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on us sinners. Amen. I'm going to be going over something. It's going to be a pretty short video, but very interesting one. So this is a Japanese inventor producing essentially crude oil from plastic. This is called the Blessed machine. It's B-L-E-S-T machine. You can find this on YouTube and Google. Essentially, it's an electric distiller that you pack the distiller full of plastic waste, styrofoam, plastic cups, bottles, anything like that. And the heat is going to melt the plastic into a gas. And the gas will be piped into water, which is what you see on the right. And the water, it can be just tap water. The water will both cool off the oil vapors so that it produces crude oil, as well as removing the sulfur to produce sweet crude oil, which is more valuable. So this sweet crude oil, this sulfur-free crude oil, can be refined into gasoline, petrol, diesel, all that stuff. Now, this sort of device would work much better using combustion as opposed to electricity. You know, like a rocket stove, where you have oxygen flowing in from one hole and then fire burning and raising the heat out of the other hole at the top. So something similar to this would work. Now, this is a moonshine still. So essentially, you would have this sort of distiller. You would pack it full of plastic, organic waste, anything from sewage, anything from farm waste, rotten food, styrofoam, plastic, anything like that. You'd want to add a little bit of water to it. Steam pyrolysis appears to produce a much better quality of crude oil, as well as charcoal in this case. Now, organic waste. See, the plastic will only produce oil, and it seems like if you add a little bit of water to the plastic, you're going to get a better quality because the water is first going to boil, and when it boils, it's going to suffocate all the oxygen out of the distiller. And without oxygen, you're going to get a better quality of crude oil when it burns, when it melts. But when you do this with organic waste, see, an oxygenated fire turns organic waste into ashes, but a poorly oxygenated environment turns organic waste into charcoal. So if you did this with organic waste, plastic, and a little bit of water, just like 1/2 inch of water at the bottom, just to steam it. You just want it to steam before it melts. So the steam phase is going to open the pores of the organic waste. It's going to suffocate all the oxygen, and you're going to get the plastic completely converted into sweet crude oil because the plastic will be passed into a water pipe in the middle. And whatever does not condense into the water, this will be like flammable gases similar to propane, hydrogen, carbon monoxide, maybe. Carbon dioxide is not flammable, but certain gases will not condense in the water, but most gases will. And when you've completely distilled all of the oil vapors out of the organic waste, out of the plastic waste, all that's going to be left in the primary distiller is going to be charcoal, steam-activated charcoal, which is very useful for farming. It's good for poison control. It's good for air filtration, water filtration. Activated charcoal is very good, and especially for agriculture because it will store nutrients, it will store moisture, and it even removes carbon dioxide out of the air as a carbon sink for carbon sequestration. Meaning that if we produce charcoal this way, we can remove carbon from the air and store it in the soil for thousands of years to come, which is very useful if climate change is real, which, let's be honest, it's not a threat. If climate change was a threat, the billionaires would have done something about it by now. So this is hydrothermal liquefaction. You can take algae, wood, and sewage or wet biomass, and you can distill it into biocrude oil using a steam pyrolysis device, which is essentially just this. It's a distiller. You get the distiller, you pack it full of organic and plastic waste, you add a little bit of water so it boils the water first. The steam phase is important. And after there's no more water, then you get the secondary phase. So the first phase, it's only going to hit around 100 Celsius, a little bit more because it's going to be a little higher than 100 Celsius. 100 Celsius is the boiling temperature of water, but because it's pressurized, it might be like 120 Celsius. But once all the water has been evaporated, then it's going to hit a much higher temperature. And this is where all this organic waste and plastic and all that stuff is going to become high quality sweet crude oil. So this is a wood gasifier car. This was actually very common during World War II. During World War II, there were many gasoline shortages, as well as food shortages and much more. Essentially, they were handing out seeds, victory gardens. They were telling us, you got to grow your own food. We're not going to be able to provide for you. And they were also telling women to cut their skirts down. Like, we need the cloth. Take your clothes, cut the skirts down to your knees, and give us the extra cloth. But this wood gasifier, what this was they took charcoal and they used the charcoal fire to heat up wood. And they would burn the wood gas, and this wood gas would power the engine. It wasn't very clean because there would be sulfur in the wood gas, but it was used to power buses, it was used to power boats, it was used to power some cars. This is how they made do when there were energy shortages. And once the wood gas was completely spent, what would be left in the distiller would be charcoal. So they would take the charcoal out of what used to be the firewood. They would put it into the charcoal burner, which is now ash, and they would get fresh firewood, and they would repeat the process. Here's another image of the wood gasifier car. So this used to be something that was done commonly during World War II. This technology is very useful, but we can improve upon it. We can produce our own petrol out of plastic and organic. Imagine sewage. Imagine the sewage treatment plants. If we took all this raw sewage, we put it into a gigantic distiller, and we heated the distiller up with like a large solar panel, or rather a large Fresnel lens, which is like a large magnifying glass that takes the sunlight and hits it at the distiller. So we're using sunlight, or we're using firewood, or a combination of the two, and we're just running this distiller all day long, turning all this sewage, all this crap into crude oil and charcoal and natural gas. That's what we could do. So here's an image of what this wood gasifier looks like. Here's a man who's demonstrating it. Here is another example of a wood gasifier. So I'm not sure exactly where it's beginning, but we can see the hose is putting out this wood gas, and then somebody has burned the wood gas. So if you're distilling out the gases from firewood, these gases are flammable, and all that's going to remain in the firewood is charcoal when you're finished. And this is what pyrolysis oil looks like. It's essentially the same thing as crude oil, but it can be improved upon. The best way to improve upon it is to add steam into the process. Steam, activated charcoal, and steam pyrolysis. So you're going to take the organic waste, and you're going to suffocate all of the oxygen with water vapor, and then you're going to get a much better quality crude oil. And you're going to distill the gases into water to get a better quality crude oil as well. So these are some of the things that are possible for humanity. Unfortunately, we are under a curse. It is said in the book of Deuteronomy in chapter 11, God says, "Behold, I set before you a blessing and a curse. A blessing if you will follow the law of Moses, and a curse if you will reject it." Well, humanity has turned against the law of Moses, and for the most part, we have also turned against the Messiah. Any Christian must obey the Torah as Christ commanded us. Everybody has their own version of Jesus, but the objective truth is that Jesus was a Jew. He taught the law of Moses, and he expected us to keep the law of Moses as well. A Christian is a Jewish convert. There are many prophecies in the Old Testament about how the God of the Jews will be great among the heathens, the Gentiles, the non-Jews. And this is what happened. The Gentiles are more passionate about God than the Jews are now. But we must complete our obedience to God. We must keep the Torah as well as the Gospels so that we can be blessed. So one more time. This is the blessed machine. It turns plastic into crude oil. It's a distiller, an electric distiller that heats the plastic into gas, and the gases are piped into water where they cool off, and the water removes the sulfur. I believe it can be improved upon significantly by adding water to the distiller just a little bit, and we could heat it using firewood in a rocket stove, or a Dakota fire hole, or a large Fresnel lens, which is like a large magnifying glass. And those big box televisions from like the early 2000s, they had these box TVs, and they used a large Fresnel lens to magnify the sun, to magnify the image. These things are used as large magnifying glasses. They can reach temperatures of around 2000 Fahrenheit. So we could use these to heat up the distiller, and there's many things that can be improved upon it. We could add a Stirling engine on the distiller, and the Stirling engine will convert the heat of the distiller into electricity. The Stirling engine turns heat into mechanical motion, which we could use to grind corn, to grind beans, to produce electricity by pulling a turbine. There's many wonderful things humanity is capable of. What has to be understood is we are not functioning at our best. The technology is not being used for our benefit. The technology is being used for global capitalism, which is the Antichrist system. Here's a moonshine still. Looks similar to this, where the gases would be piped from the large distiller in the middle into the water of the second distiller, the large distiller on the left into the secondary distiller in the middle, and whatever gases do not condense into the secondary distiller of water, these would be flammable gases which we could collect going outwards. So here we can see some of the things we can convert into bio-crude oil, such as sewage, wood, and algae. Here's a wood gasifier engine. Here's another one. Here's another example. Here's one of these in action. Here's what pyrolysis oil looks like. And that is the end of the video. God bless. Shalom. Remember the law of Moses. It's very important. Jesus was very clear. We must keep the Torah. If we are to be Christians, we must keep the Torah. This is not optional. If we are not going to obey Jesus, we are not true Christians. A Christian is a faithful Jew who follows the Torah and the prophets and the Messiah, who is God in the flesh. Shalom.